Welcome back, pet parent. I have none other than Billy Hoekman back with me today. And we were just talking before this. This is going to be so raw of an episode because neither of us know what we're doing. We have agreed. So, welcome back, Billy. How are you doing today?
I am pretty good. It's been the rainiest month almost I think maybe ever in the month of May in Lancaster, which is not my jam, but it's sunny today, so I feel good about that.
Well, good. It's a sunny day. Let's take advantage. We're going to talk about Green Juju's probiotics. Before we do that, though, would you mind telling me or reminding the listeners there's prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics? Can we run through that real quick?
Yeah. So prebiotics are the things that that probiotics eat. So they are food for probiotics. Probiotics are those beneficial bacteria that do things in your gut, and postbiotics are the result of those probiotics in your gut, their life cycle, and when they grow and metabolize, they basically sort of the byproduct of that is like enzymes, vitamins, beneficial nutrients, organic acids. So it's kind of like a whole life cycle, which is what you get in, say our wild fermented mushroom probiotic or FAM's digestive support or Lewis inflammation support or something like that. Because it's the whole food, you get the whole gambit of those things.
So, we talk so much about gut health, and that's just what we're doing here again today. But it's so important for everything going on in the body. Like, if our gut isn't functioning properly, if we're not getting the pre and probiotics, if we're not getting those postbiotic breakdowns, then nothing is like really functioning in the body all that well. Um, when we think about food as medicine and we think about that for our pets, I think that's kind of where Green Juju kind of differentiates themselves from most other pet foods, even in the healthy pet food space, that it's so important for our pets to really thrive. But what was it like? Why did you decide to go out and play around with making these probiotic formulas? Like what were you seeing or what were you looking for that wasn't there in the market?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I was actually at a trade show over last week for like our retailers, and a couple of them came up and they were like separately were like, "Oh, we think you're doing like the most innovative stuff in the industry," and that was a huge compliment. And that's really what we strive for is to when Kelly and I create all the products, it comes back to like the premise of we don't know what the best diet is for a dog or cat. Like we have a good foundation for it, but we always need to improve on it. We always need to, and that's where like I consider I consider that my strongest asset is like creativity in that realm. I really like established knowledge and all that kind of stuff, but pushing that and for better health outcomes is really my passion. And the process of making these products is so fun with the entire team. When it goes back to everybody on board with Green Juju, I think it's exciting and fun, and we do it almost too much because we like it. We always try to be like, oh, we're not gonna do as many new products and new ideas come. To circle back to your question, I don't remember the exact. So one of the things that like I say this a lot, I probably said this on your podcast a lot, but I think about nutrition all the time. And I think about like different ways of approaching it. It's just I've been doing this, I've been thinking in that way since like, I don't know, going back to like 2010, right? Like just even when I just had my own dog Lua and I wasn't really in the industry or anything like that and I was just doing stuff for her. That's just the way that I thought for whatever reason. And so it's hard for me to pinpoint the exact idea, but I do remember talking with Kelly and being like, wouldn't it be really cool if we could take these foods that have all of these different diverse probiotic species and somehow remove them from the food and put them in a powdered probiotic. And at that point, it's just kind of like a dream because there's a lot of ideas. It's a very funny inside joke for our team that we have a shelved products folder in our shared drives, and it's things that are done or things that we don't know if they'd sell or they're too expensive or whatever. But they're all there and they're done and they're, things that Um, it also might be like, hey, I think like, oh, this is really cool, and everybody else like, no, we're not doing that. So it really depends on that. But I've always been really obsessed with this idea of naturally occurring probiotics versus, you know, what we see as traditional probiotic supplements. And I think that the research really is clarifying that diversity is key over potency. And so the whole premise behind these is diversity over potency. And I looked long and hard at the human supplement industry, and obviously I knew it wasn't in the pet food industry, but I looked long and hard and I said, no one's ever done this before. So I think we can make some really big inroads with this. And so we went about finding how to do it and working with a lab. And it's been a really interesting process throughout the way.
So there are three different ones. Can you break them down for me and tell me the difference in the three?
Yeah. So we have soil, leaf, and farm. And kudos to Kelly on the names for those because she came up with it. She's so good at
They're
marketing,
adorable.
packaging.
Yeah.
Like, she just she came up with all of those herself. I don't claim any credit for that. And so we have soil, leaf, and farm. And so the first part is, I guess the first thing to go would be to go into how we make them.
Okay.
Actually, no, I'm going to go into the cultures because the cultures to me are my favorite part. And so uh, they're so when I say cultures, I mean whole food cultures. So
Okay.
all of the cultures that come from fermented foods, all of the probiotics and the healthy yeast that come from specific three fermented foods. And it goes even further than that because these aren't just these are like raw fermented milk, kombucha, and wild fermented plants. It goes further than that because of the fact that they come from Kelly and I. And, we have our cultures and it's kind of a cool thing. We could send those out, to be very nerdy. We could send those out into the world. But soil is derived from Bailey's blend. So in order to make the culture base here, I took Bailey's blend and I added a 2% salt, added 2% sea salt to it so I could reduce the pH quicker and create a greater ferment in it. All of basically, much like when you look at any of our fermented products, all of the probiotics in soil come from the broccoli, the green cabbage, the cilantro, all those things that are in Bailey's blend. So I think it's like 8 different plants, right? A very unique blend there. And typically, when you look at the literature, those are going to have at least 500 different species on average in any wild fermented vegetation. So that's really like nature. That's essentially like the probiotic powder version of letting your dog go out into the grass and eat dirt and roll around because there's soil-based and non-soil-based cultures there. And there's such a wide diversity of them. And we've already seen some amazing results in our testing. We are going down the path now of 2 clinical research studies. But even in our testing and some of our data that we currently have, we've had some amazing results. And it's really cool when you can combine like interesting theory and real results. So a good example of that is the reason why I think this works so well is because we've really removed dogs and cats from their evolutionary environment. So
Mhm.
when it comes down to it, they don't live in the woods anymore. They don't sleep outside. They don't, cats don't go outside at all usually. And so that's great for them. They're very comfortable. My dog's very comfortable between my legs under the blankets every night. I'm not very comfortable, I will say, when he does that. But I let him do it for whatever reason. And so, or when he's pushing me off the bed. So that's living with a dog. So, but that's not great for his microbiome. And so it's really nice to be able to have this theory and go, this is like the probiotic equivalent of letting them do that because it brings it into the bowl. And then we had a case study that we did with Barbara Royal's lead vet tech, which they did a gut dysbiosis test, which it started at, so 0 is basically no gut dysbiosis. And so she tested before she did soil and she had a 3.8, which is a pretty high level of gut dysbiosis. And that same test measures for pathogens and then toxins coming off of those pathogens. And she did soil for a month and then retested. This gut dysbiosis went down to 0.8, so almost healed. That
Wow.
tested negative for pathogens and tested negative for the toxins coming off those pathogens. So we think that's a really good, just specific case study instance, which is kind of why we're going down the research, the clinical research route with these. So it's really cool when you can have that in theory and then see it actually in practice. And so that's what I think we're going to see. And when I go into the usability, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But so that's soil, and it's just it's hard to say that you can outdo nature in this instance, because this is like
Yeah.
nature's version of a probiotic. So we also
So
have,
wait, because so that's where my mind drifts, talking about you can't outdo nature, right? And I know we've talked about this a couple of times on the podcast where you had to completely rethink HPP, and now I'm looking at these probiotics and I'm like they look incredible. They're so wonderful, but like that kind of like naturalist mentality, kind of, I feel like I'm having, or maybe you had to, and maybe other people out there who are just like, but nature provides, let's just do what's natural, let's just go out and get whatever from nature. Like the fact that you are taking these and you're sending them through a laboratory and removing the food, like how do you feel about that, really? How do you feel about that?
yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, on the HPP thing, I think it's an interesting way to look at food safety in general. Is it doesn't matter what the food safety method is. You're taking a natural process and applying it. You're taking naturally existing things and applying them in non-natural ways.
Mm-hmm.
So, bacteriophages, you are taking these viruses that attack bacteria and you're applying them in amounts that you don't see in nature, right?
Sure.
So, fermentation, you're taking these bacteria that exist in nature and you're applying them in amounts that you don't see happen naturally in nature, right? HPP, you are taking pressure, which obviously exists in nature, and you're applying it in amounts that don't exist in food in nature. So I think with all food safety steps, you're taking natural processes. Well, unless it's like I would say the main three that you're looking at in raw food for pets, right? Each one of them is a naturally existing process that you're applying in an unnatural way. And that's what it takes to, control pathogens essentially. So I don't agree that, so if you say nature is best is just a starting point. If you say nature is best and that's where you end it, then that's a logical fallacy. It's the appeal to nature logical fallacy. And you cannot build an argument based on a logical fallacy, at least not one that's going to be true because of that reason. So that's just a starting point. And so I would say, like, when I say it's hard to outdo nature, what I mean by that is it's hard to outdo what is naturally existing in the environment. Because in this one specifically, soil, we're letting the environment grow as a probiotic. And we still need to see the results in the animals, which is the actual science part. So we start with this concept of nature and then we move forward because here's another good example of that. If someone were to say humans are the only species that drink milk in adulthood, like that
I've
really
heard
sounds
that.
like
I don't know if that's true.
that's like a cohesive argument, but then
Okay.
you apply that to other things and you say, well, humans are the only animals that use iPhones. So what, right?
No, I'm training my dog to use my iPhone. No, I'm just
Well,
kidding.
there you go. So that doesn't give it a negative or positive value. You then have to look at what is the actual science behind milk. Is it digestible? All these different things. So I use that as an example of kind of what I was talking about. So, and I think we will address that as well.
Sorry, I do
Oh
like
yeah,
how you called out iPhones when you don't use an iPhone, but
that's a good
um,
point.
I'm
I
I'm
get made
laughing
fun of.
because
I get made fun of all the time for that, and from the Green Juju folks.
really,
Yes,
yeah, I
100%.
know. I get so frustrated when I send somebody a text for the first time and it doesn't come back blue, it comes back green. I'm like, oh, do I want to talk to this person anymore?
those are the people who want good cameras. So, as it turns out,
But okay, all right. So
those are my people.
back
And
to
the ones that want the biggest phone that's ever existed in the
the
history of the
biggest, yeah, yeah. I'm kind of intentional about like whatever version of the iPhone I go get. I'm like, what's the smallest version of that iPhone? Because I don't like. I still want to be able to put it in my pocket. Like, how do you? I mean, I guess your pockets are bigger than mine, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I just go what's the best camera, and this one has 5 cameras, so it has to be the best one. That's what I. So maybe
What
if
were we
it's the
talking about? We were
phone,
talking about.
the phone would be 6. That's crazy. It just blew my own mind. So we're talking about soil, and I will kind of address more of that too, I think, when we get into like the usability of it, of all these,
All right. Okay.
and kind of the concept that we were like going for. So we also have farm, which comes from fermented raw milk and is a very special culture itself, which is my raw yogurt. I don't know what's going on with my voice, but it's just going to be what it is. Um, so it's going farm is my home raw yogurt culture, which has been alive for at the time that we sent it to the lab over 2 years. So
Can I ask you what you named it?
I have no name for it.
You have no name for it? You call it alive, but then you don't name it?
I don't have a name for or a gender for that. I do have a gender for my kombucha Scoby. She's a girl, but
She's a girl.
no
That makes
names.
sense because it's life. It's life-giving.
Yes,
It makes sense.
it is. It is the most intense culture, the yogurt culture, because it's so basically, I'll go into why it's intense because I'm the only one who drinks this stuff, but
Okay.
which is good that we put it in the cultures into this powdered form. So this is both cow and goat milk, and it's mostly cow because that's what I actually prefer when it comes to, the taste of it. But so essentially, I started with a standard yogurt culture and made yogurt um, at 100 degrees, which means that it maintains all of the nutrients and and bacteria content of raw milk. Right. And so I'm adding these cultures, but the other cultures will grow as well. So we started there. And then I also added in like I believe 4 other local Pennsylvania farms that make raw milk or that make, sorry, raw yogurt. So it was their own blend of raw yogurt, but that also goes to the yeast in the air, it goes to that specific farm, goes to all those different things. I also added a commercial coconut yogurt to it. So that's in there as well. And by the way, every time I added something, I would still do the 1/4 of a cup of the last batch, and then I'd do 1/8 cup of the new thing. And within that time, within the 2 years, I made raw yogurt once or twice a week, every week, basically. And so every time I added in a new batch of raw milk, there's more diversity there. It depended on that cow or goat's genetics, what they ate, the farm they were on, the temperature of the grass, all these things dictate the probiotic content of raw milk. And so it's a very, very diverse culture. And the actual culture itself is so fermented, it's very high in yeast, naturally existing yeast as well. And so it's kind of smells like bread. Was the first thing. I've never added yeast to it, which is interesting. Kind of smells like bread, and it's very tangy. There's like basically no
So where
sugar
is it getting the yeast from? Is it just the environment?
from the raw milk and from the
It's
environment.
just
Yeah.
there.
And
Okay.
so, and yeast tend to proliferate even better than bacteria. So it it it's very tangy. There's literally no sweetness to it, essentially. It's very like thick for raw yogurt, and it's slightly carbonated. Like that's how fermented this is. And so I
Wow.
enjoy it. I had it this morning, but no one else in my house will drink it. So, in fact, even Huckleberry was like, "Whoa, this is intense." So, so it's a good thing for people that so we're taking this huge culture base. So if you look at the literature on raw milk, you have like at least 3,000 different cultures in healthy yeast. And in this case, the lab actually took the culture and grew it in one environment that was conducive to yeast and one environment that was conducive to bacteria. And we use a 50-50 split of the yeast and bacteria. that make up the entire culture. And we do that for both leaf, which we'll talk about, and farm. So this is like, even for being fermented raw milk, this is an incredibly diverse culture. So really proud of that as well. And leaf is a reference to tea leaves because it's kombucha based, and it's my kombucha SCOBY, which has been alive for over 10 years and is in the same way incredibly diversified. So it's actually lived in several different regions. So it's lived in LA, it's lived in Philadelphia, it's lived in Lancaster, where I live now, and it has many of my mentors and friends' SCOBYs added into it for that bacteria diversity. It has a bunch of a bunch of the farmers I shop with around here make kombucha. So they will sell their kombucha or their SCOBY, and I'll use it as a starter, that kind of thing. So it has a lot of PA farms in it as well, and just countless commercial brands. So I've made it a practice in the past of being like, oh, this is a new brand and they have a plain kombucha. So I can use this as my starter and inoculate that into the general diversity. So like I said, it's been going for 10 years, and it's full of really good yeast and really good bacteria. And so it was really neat for me personally to be able to kind of, put those out into the world and get to see the dogs and cats of America really benefiting from those things. It's also
Hmm.
kind of interesting for me because they're just like what I consume on a daily basis anyway. So it's weird that they're kind of like out there in stores.
Yeah.
So that's really the story behind each one of those cultures.
So tell me, I mean, I've listened to you talk about this, but describe this process of removing the food. Like, how do you get it
Hardest
to the
part
powder?
I think that's the hardest part for people to wrap their minds around. And that was the
Okay.
reason why we do retail training videos for stores. And we had to like redo the whole video recently because when we were coming out with this, we were figuring it out. And, how do you explain this high level thing to a part-time
Hmm.
pet store employee? And so
Or somebody like
basically what
me, like,
basically what happens is we take I sent the cultures to the lab we work with. So I grew out the kombucha. I don't know if this is particularly relevant, but it was blueberry kombucha, that specific batch that I sent. Because I make all different, every time I make kombucha, I second ferment it. So the current one I have is pomegranate, like blueberry, whatever, right? So I take the culture and I sent them to the lab. And what the lab does is first they test it to make sure there's no pathogens in it. And then they check the probiotic content of those specific batches. So it's actually kind of cool for me in the first place because I got some like professional lab testing on my own yogurt kombucha, right? So that was pretty cool. Just generally, so because I'm a nerd and think about, oh, I'm getting this many probiotics per this, for myself every day or for Huckleberry, whatever. And so we send those to a lab, and what that lab does is they take those bacteria, they take that culture and they grow it in a different medium. So those bacteria, I'll just take farm. So those bacteria, those probiotics and yeast normally eat the milk sugars in the milk, and then you have the milk itself. So you can take that entire culture, all those bacteria, and you can put them in a different environment. So you can put them in, say, a sugar environment, and they'll eat the sugar the same way, and they'll digest it completely, and they'll grow in exactly the same way. So it's essentially like you're taking these bacteria, but the difference there is normally when you make a probiotic, you would tell the lab like, oh, we want these 10 strains and we want this amount of them. But in this case, they just took the whole culture and then let it grow for what it was going to do for that like seed culture. So it's just the bacteria in the new medium. The only thing that's in it is artichoke fiber, organic artichoke fiber, which is the prebiotic in there. And it's less than a gram. So I don't think it's going to throw anything off, energetically or anything like that. So, people might want to think about like you're essentially like straining the food out and then you
hmm
just using the bacteria and then growing them in a new environment. It's kind of similar to, we tested out if you could ferment our raw milk with these and you can. It's kind of a
okay.
similar thing. I mean, if you took soil and wanted to ferment our raw goat's milk with it, you would be taking bacteria that usually feed on the fiber in plants and you're putting it into milk and now they're going to feed on like lactose sugars. So it's kind of a similar thing, and you're just taking the food away from it. So it's just the bacteria and yeast. And the really cool thing is, so let's say you're like, I like soil. Soil is the one I'm going to use. I recommend rotating between them, but if you were going to say just use soil, when the lab makes a new batch of that, they're just they take the seed culture and they're just growing out the whole culture. So every time they grow it out, it'll grow out in different ways because it's not 100%
Mm,
predictable. So
yeah.
essentially, what will happen is you'll get the same bacteria, the same probiotics, but you'll get them in different amounts. So it's kind of like rotating supplements without even having to rotate a supplement.
So that was actually one of my questions. Oh, I'm getting my feedback again. So many products out there, companies are intentional about making sure that every single pill or bottle has exactly what they say it has in it. And you're saying, no, we don't necessarily want to do that, right?
We want there to be variance. We want there to be estimated amounts of things because that's what you get in fermented foods. Like when
Mm-hmm.
you feed your dog raw milk, you're not getting like there's these probiotics. No, it's totally dependent on the environment, the farm, the time of year. Does that goat like, going outside more? Does it like eating hay more? By the way, PSA, goats like hay more than grass. I'm just throwing that out there because it's a misconception. Whenever we take
Really?
people to the farm, the goats are inside most of the time because goats are, it's kind of hilarious. I was talking to one of our goat farmers and he's like, yeah, this is a total tangent, but I think it's relevant. He's like, yeah, they don't really like when they don't really like when it's raining or when it's too sunny or too hot. He's like, they don't really like much of anything. So,
They
and I would kind of
don't like
agree with
much of
that because
anything.
it's kind of funny because it'll be like this beautiful day and keep in mind the barns that we have are total open-sided, but they're just hanging out inside and because I think people ask me all the time like, oh, is your goat's milk, you know, is it grass-fed? It is. And they do go outside and eat grass, but they're not like cows. They don't just graze, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they
Yeah.
actually like hay, which spoiler is grass better. So that's my weird tangent for the day because every time we take pictures of the goats inside, people are like, why aren't they outside? Because they don't want to be, and we just let them go wherever they want to. But I digress. So we want that variance, and that's why we're also looking at this clinical research that we're going to be doing, because we want to see what does this do in the gut, and we also want to see what does this do for the pet itself. And I won't
Mm-hmm.
elaborate that on that too much because that will be coming out at, honestly in the near future. It doesn't take that long to do these things, but um because that's the most important thing is how does it make your pet healthier? And so
Yeah.
going back to the potency thing, I think the other thing that this does is it concentrates nature or the naturally existing probiotics because when they're found like in food in nature, they're in a lot of moisture, so they're diluted through that moisture content. Like raw milk
Okay. Yeah.
doesn't have a ton of potency, doesn't have a ton of amount of probiotics, but it has a ton of diversity of species. And so
Mm.
this concentrates that to some degree. So like that little bottle, the 30-gram bottle of leaf has as many probiotics as a gallon and a half of kombucha because you're taking the moisture content out of it. And that's where when you go back to I speculate that that's where, when you go back to that case study I was talking about, I think it probably worked that quickly because of the concentration of those bacteria in there. So it sort of does that. The other great use would be there's a lot of animals that don't do well with fermentation. There are a lot that do. There are some that don't. I know a lot of really great people I work with and respect, you included, who do health consultations and you work with people on what their animals should be eating. And, having gone on tour this year with Rita Hogan. And I don't know, I kind of struggled with her name there, which is fitting because if she watches this, she always pronounces my name wrong. So I'm gonna see her on Friday. We have an event on Friday, so I'm gonna make fun of her I've been meaning to make fun of her for that. But so I totally just lost my trail. So not every animal can do fermented foods, and so this is a great way to
Mm-hmm.
be like these this is the bacteria from fermented foods that's so beneficial, but it's just the bacteria. And then the other, I think the coolest thing I've learned on that tour is about food energetics. I don't know.
Mhm.
I'm like, I mean, Kelly would tell you, I'm like all science for the most part. I've been better at this now, but I'm all amino acids and then nutrients, and I'm not the expert on warming and cooling. And, I look to my friends who are experts. I look to Judy Morgan, I look to Rita, I look to, those are the people I go to. So I've been learning a lot more from Rita, and I think I didn't even think about this when we made it, but I think the coolest part about this is all of these foods in their native state have energetics attached to them. They might be warming, they might be neutral, they might be cooling. These are nothing. These bacteria aren't warming, cooling, or neutral. They're nothing. And so now if you're working with someone who needs, say, cooling foods, but would really benefit from the probiotics in raw fermented dairy, you can use these now as, it helps there, but I don't think your animal needs to, you know, not be able to do something to use these. I'm going to use them every day. I have been using them. And so I think the other thing that people can do as well is if they have something that works really well, they can rotate with that too. If they do a probiotic that works for them, great. So you could rotate with that, or you could use them together because ours is
Mhm.
high diversity, low potency. It's just food. It's just food based, right? And so there's nothing that says you can't use one in the morning or one at night to be able to do that. I mean, it's kind of like what we do, and Kelly says this the best way when she talks about who should use what. Like we have these like parameters, like farm is great for immunity because it's raw milk based, right? Leaf is really good for yeast issues because it has all these native species of happy yeast that cannot crowd out bad yeast. And then you say like soil is really good for, allergies, general diversity, that kind of thing. But it's like deciding between like, which one do I want to pick specifically? Do I want to drink kombucha? Do I want to eat yogurt?
Mhm.
Do I want to eat fermented vegetables? No, you should probably do all those things. And
Yeah.
so either rotating between the however people want to rotate, I think is the best way to go. But I think really the proof is in the pudding. I think just try it. If it works, great.
Yeah, I'm not shy about posting on social media that I use a lot of Green Juju products myself, like on me. I've used the veggie blends in my smoothies when I have been too lazy to go to the store and buy fresh veggies, and I drink the milk all the time. And it's interesting that you're like you prefer cow's milk, and for a long time I did too, and I'm actually starting to prefer the goat's milk, which is interesting to me. But I can see myself using these probiotics as well. And I know what you're going to say. You're going to say these products are made for dogs and cats, and I cannot condone you using these products. But I do, and they're wonderful. And this is my
You know,
podcast, so I can say it.
that's true. I do agree with your statement. I don't, we make everything for dogs and cats. I do think that out of anything, I do think that honestly, these probiotics are the most relatable to people, right? Because
Yeah.
they're food and they're food based, and we took traditional foods that humans have been making for a very long time and made them into a probiotic supplement. And so I don't really see any reason why that would be out to without getting totally into that with humans as well. And that's the thing about Green Juju. I mean, although we do sell for pets, everything we do is of the highest quality we can
Hmm.
do. And, that just comes back from when I originally joined Green Juju. That's how Kelly's always done it. And I've actually been there 4 years as of this month, which is crazy, but
Wow.
it's been really fun to do that. And I don't think Antoine would kill me for saying this, but hopefully he doesn't, because I'm not going to tell you anything about it. But there could be something new coming very soon.
There's always something new coming very soon that you can't talk about. I don't like always.
That's very true. So there could be. I'm just saying there might be. There's a good possibility of it, and I'm excited about it. I think it'll be really cool. And yeah, we don't rest. We always make things and travel. And, that's how we live our lives. And here we are. And I think people forget too, there's like 4 full-time employees at Green Juju. So,
Yeah, you do bring that up. But it's impressive for what you guys do. It's really impressive to have such a small team for the huge impact that you're making.
well, and for the people
So,
watching,
okay,
none of those people are the people behind me. They keep walking by because this is a co-working space. So I don't work
yeah.
with any of these. It looks like a very fancy
I don't
office,
know
but
these people. Yeah, it does. It does. So, okay, the probiotics, yeah, I would agree. Like rotating is probably going to be your best bet, but like you said, they kind of naturally rotate anyway, the way that they're growing, the way they're, which is really cool. Yeah, I'm really excited to start using these in my consultations as well, and then for my dog, and then for me. And I don't know, maybe for my cats if they'll take it, which reminds me, that was another question. Like, what are you hearing as far as like palatability? How are animals responding?
palatability is great because it's a very fine white powder that basically like dissolves into whatever you're doing it. Like,
So hard to travel through TSA with?
yeah, maybe. I haven't tried it yet. But the taste of it is like just slightly sweet, nothing. And I don't think we've had any animal that really has even noticed what it is. The way that I feed it to Huck, like, I'm sort of anal about these things, but the way that I feed it to Huckleberry is I essentially there's a scoop in it. So it comes with a scoop and the directions are just scoop per weight or whatever. And so I just take the scoop and kind of like lightly tap it into his milk and it just dissolves as
Hmm.
it hits it. And that's pretty much it. But I'm also like, I don't want the clump in there or whatever. You'd still probably eat it just fine, but that's just who I am. So, I just do the tap in there and then it dissolves in there. Or you could put it like on our veggie blends or something like that,
Hmm.
um, you know, in between them or something. I think the only reason that I'm not doing that is because I'm currently using PEA from Judy Morgan, and I put that between the veggie blends. It's a lot of powder, but I'm excited to see. We've we've reduced Huckleberry's allergies by almost 100%, and so I was like, maybe this is the thing that I'm a perfectionist, so maybe this is the kind of thing that can get me there. But cats would benefit from this greatly because they don't go outside at all. So
Yeah.
I would start with soil and then with a lot of animals that have digestive issues, just generally, I would start with soil and do that for like 4 weeks, which will be like basically one of a jar will last as a dog 0 to 30 pounds for 2 months and then 30 to 60 pounds 1 month. So I would do like 4 weeks on, I got to plug my computer in. I'm a real professional here. I don't want my
Billy,
battery to run out. I
thank
gotta
you for
answer.
taking me so seriously. I appreciate you so much.
So I do this during meetings.
Thank goodness this is a recording.
Uh,
I'm going
I'm
to
really
leave this
good.
in just so people get an idea of how you treat me.
So going back to cats, so I don't lose my train of thought. They're inside all the time, which we love them and it protects them, but it's just not good for their microbiome. And so,
Hmm.
or the other thing that I feel like I would really want to mention, and this is kind of like a hot button issue, and I kind of want to give a new take on it,
No. Okay.
is fecal transplants. So fecal
Yes.
transplants, they are great. They work, right? However, I think that our probiotics are specifically suited to use long term after fecal transplants. Because basically, at least what you see, and I've actually had meetings with some people that work in fecal transplants, and I've asked them this question. I haven't got a super good answer on it, which is like, okay, you do the fecal transplant, you fix the gut, right? Then what happens a month later or 2 months later,
Right. Yeah.
right? Because that happened because of the environment, because of the food, because of all these different like
Hmm.
factors. And the story that I bring up when someone says this is there was a guy who was actually living with a tribe in Africa who were like hunter gatherers and they would eat like hundreds of different types of plants. And because of that, they had these like amazingly diverse microbiomes. And so
Hmm.
this guy lived with them and got this amazingly diverse microbiome. And then he went back to America and it was gone like within a month
Got sick. Yeah.
because he ate food here. He lived here. He,
Mhm.
all bacteria is ubiquitous. Bacteria is, everyone you
Yeah.
share a home with, pet or person, you're sharing bacteria. So I think that fecal transplants can be great. Let's re-establish the gut. Let's reset the gut. And then I think the problem that a lot of the, the advocates for those have is, well, once we reset the gut, we don't want to monoculture the gut with just these 15 different bacteria or do a bunch of these potent
Hmm.
bacteria. And that's not what we're doing, right? We're having all of these bacteria that they would get from naturally eating foods anyway in a concentrated amount. So I
Yeah.
think that these are the perfect thing if you do a fecal transplant to then move on to rotating between all of our probiotics to get all of those thousands of different cultures on a continual basis.
Hmm. It's funny that you brought that up because I'm actually right now waiting for some FMT capsules for Kim, and that is exactly what I was going to do, was do the month of FMT and start her on. I hadn't decided yet which one, the soil or farm or leaf. I hadn't decided. I'm gonna have to go back and like remember everything you just told me to make a decision on which one to start her on. But like that's my plan with her as well.
I would start with soil. You could do whatever you want, but this is my recommendation. I would start with
I
soil
can do whatever I want. Thank you for permission, though.
and then I would go to farm and then I would go to leaf and I would just rotate through those. Or people rotate however they want. Like some people like to do a different, like when they do food, I feed
Huh.
like bison, then I go to beef. I do the whole bag, then I go to beef. I do the whole bag. Some people like to do different protein every day, etc. So people can rotate these probiotics however they want, right? They can do a different one every day, different meal. They can do one bottle and then move to the next bottle. However people want to do it is totally fine. But, and they go great with other probiotics. I mean, 36% of my dog's diet is raw milk. And so he gets a lot of probiotics from that as well, but he's also getting them
Hmm.
from this, right? And so
Yeah. Yeah. I have no idea the percentage of my dog's diet that is Green Juju's raw goat's milk, but it is there. But I appreciate that you know the exact percentage.
it's 36, it's 14% one whole egg, and then 50% our food. That's his base. And then I can, do the veggie blends. That stuff doesn't really add calories, right? Bone
Hmm.
broth, it's just marginal. So it's 50, 36, and 14. That's it. So 50% of his diet is eggs and raw eggs and raw milk.
Bringing up the veggie blends really quickly before you go, because I know your time is limited, because you are so important and everybody loves you.
Not everybody, but yeah.
The last time you were on, we talked about the new Vitality blend. How's that going? How's that being received?
Really well. So much so as far as like the digestive results we've gotten back that we just did. Dr. Keith and Kelly and I were just in Seattle and we did kind of a round table and we were making health protocols for our vet program. And so vets can have our idea of what, is a supportive diet for X condition, be it kidney disease, cancer, whatever. And we specifically included that as the starter for our digestive support diet and doing that for 4 weeks and then moving to some rotation there. But we've found through feedback that not only the fiber part of it, but the purple cabbage as well, being one of the main ingredients, has really helped, I think, with digestive lining as well. And it's kind of
Mm.
both of those things, right? Like one of the reasons I feel like I fixed Huckleberry's rogue milk intolerance was the fact that, I feed him the freeze dried food and I rehydrate it with at least double the amount of bone broth. So he's getting a lot of bone broth per day. And I do think that that really helped to kind of like heal his gut and help those bacteria because people don't realize that if you are intolerant to even raw milk, that you can kind of rebuild your gut microbiome to be able to process lactose and those things. And so I think that's what happened. But I think that Vitality Blend really helps them in the same way. And I will call out, because we don't really call it out that much, but it does actually ferment like Bailey's Blend too.
Hmm.
I have done
Okay.
in my house, and so it does work. So there's always experiments going on. There's currently two outside of my normal ferments, so it's too much probably for one kitchen, but here we are. So Vitality Blend does work in the same way. For those that like to ferment the Bailey's blend, you can ferment the Vitality blend as well.
Nice. Oh, the probiotics are out. They can go to their indie pet store. They can ask for them if they're not already there, right? And they can order.
So
They can order
there, yeah,
online if
there's a
they have
couple
to.
things you can order them from our website too, but they will cost you more money because you'll be paying shipping. But if you
Hmm.
can't find them, because I go to your indie retailer first. We just get enough people who are like, I don't have one near me, etc. So
Yeah.
those people, they are available now to there, but it's good to spend your money locally and with your local pet store. And also you just get the best deals, so that helps as well. And you can get other fun stuff. I encourage people while you're buying your Green Juju, buy dog toys and fun stuff for your dog as well, because they like it and that really benefits the store as far as their sales go. So I let Maple, my daughter, pick out all of Huckleberry's dog toys now. So that's her job. She's pretty good at it. So
I'm sorry.
I have a
You're
friend.
telling me. You're telling me that a little girl, a woman, going to be a woman, is good at shopping. That's what you're
Yes,
telling me.
already. Although she is like, she did something yesterday that was like, and I was like, oh, you're my daughter. So she wants to do a lemonade stand and
Huh?
make money. And the first thing she did to figure out the lemonade stand, and she's 4, she's just turned 4, she made a graph that showed how many drinks people would need based on the weather outside.
Wow.
So sunny
Wow.
day was 4 lemonades.
That's amazing. I mean,
So
that's a lot of liquid.
she's
She's
like
gonna have
me
to.
in a lot of ways, which is good and bad. So mostly
Good and
bad.
bad. Aw. All right, Billy, thank you so much for coming back on talking about these probiotics. Yeah, I'm just really excited for them, really excited to hear because you're always like, yeah, we're working on something and I can't tell you what it is. So next time we'll have you back on for whatever that is.
Well, if that thing does come to fruition, you will know soon. So uh,
Yeah.
the world will know soon. I appreciate it. By the way, if anyone wants to has any other questions, if you just reach out to info@greenjuju.com, I answer all the nutrition questions that come into Green Juju. So I'm happy to help anyone at any time. Just let me know what I can do.
I'm just gonna start emailing you all kinds of questions. No?
Yeah, that'd be great. And I'll be like, this is the first one that I'll be like, I didn't get your email. I don't know what I'm talking about. I have no idea. It's not working.
No idea. Oh my gosh, she's gonna block my email now. All right. Thanks so much, Billy. I appreciate you guys. Please have a great rest of your week. Give your pet some extra love from me and Billy this week, and I'm sure we'll have him on again soon. Bye.